One spot I want to start with because I think it is so important right now. And also, like, even I was talking to friends who are doing human design and adding like all the insights to their daily life. They hadn't heard about your new paradigm workshop in your app and all the juicy nuggets that are coming from that and all the wisdom. I am definitely someone who, when the concept and the idea of the new paradigm came out a few years back, the dialogue around it in the spiritual community, it felt like two things. A little bit of escapism. Oh, let's think about this thing that's happening in the future because the new paradigm's coming. None of this matters. And then there was also this sense of like, I don't have to worry about cleaning up my side of the street because it'll all be taken care of for me in the new paradigm. So it was like spiritual bypass. So I tuned out. I was like, I'm not really going to like invest time and energy into that. But when I heard your workshops and I heard you talk about it on your socials too, I was like, wait, this is so fascinating, so applicable for the now. For someone who is like, what the heck is the new paradigm? Where did this come from? Where did this concept come from? Can you give a little background on that? And yeah, we'll go into so much more.
So it's really amazing because I know exactly what you mean, where people are saying, oh, well, we're ascending into 5D and it's all going to be love and light and none of this is going to matter anyway. And yes, that's such an ungrounded sort of perspective. And I feel like for some people, we need to know the cogs behind why people say that. So the founder of Human Design said this when he was first channeling the information in 1987, that there are different cycles that humanity moves through. And each one kind of layers on top of the other. So it's not even necessarily that one is quote unquote better than the other. Some of the ways that we have to be now, we have created positive expressions of them and we've created negative expressions of them. And when the new paradigm, when the cycle changes, which is in 2027, there will be a different kind of theme that we have to collectively focus on. So imagine every single person on this planet has a specific karma, but we all have a collective karma too. And they are different pockets of life that we are all tasked with exploring. So since 1615, which is the beginning of this cycle, the emphasis has really been on building, right? So building constitutions, institutions, companies, globalization, systems that, span across the whole world. And again, wherever we have done that with positive consciousness will remain in the future. And wherever that has been sort of not for our best because it was done from a place of control or lack or fear, trotting on other people to get our way, those are the things that we're now seeing are being removed. And the first video that I made about this on my website, that was in 2018. I think it's my favorite video I've ever made because everything I've said in that video, I'm like freaked out now when I listen to it because I'm like, oh, this all became true. Wow. Because as we come to the end of any cycle, everything that needs to go gets heightened. You know, when you're like around your Saturn return and then everything comes to a point, it's like peaks. This is where we are now, right? So since basically 2012 to 2027, there's been a faster speed up of, okay, we need to actually just make everything crumble that you can't bring into the new world. And so one of the things about the new paradigm is that where this one has had so much of a focus on the collective, the new paradigm is going to have, the next cycle I should say, is going to have a focus on the individual. So it's much more about what do you want to do with your life, your sovereignty, you becoming, we're already seeing now people making whole brands around themselves. However, what's one of the tasks that comes with that is you have to take full responsibility. No one's coming to save you. You can't blame it on the government. You can't blame it on your mother. You can't blame it on anything. If you really want to make the most of this new paradigm, it has to be completely on you. And that's the part that I think we're finding scary, but also life, by crumbling all our support systems around us, is making it easier for us to do / forcing us to do.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think when you think about going internally and being that sovereign being for yourself, how that impacts community, how that impacts the collective, how that impacts, it's almost like a different way of approaching impacting us as a society. Whereas like before, it was like building on these structures and maybe keeping everyone contained in certain ways. And now it's like, okay, let everyone go to their fullest potential of genius, everything that's in their design, let them live their full purpose, unencumbered, without the limiting beliefs, all of those things. And if someone does that, what society do we create? What evolution do we create at that point?
Absolutely. And that's one of the big mature spiritual understandings to keep with us is that everything that we've currently built, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there are good applications of, listen, we need people in government because we can't not have a government. And why? Because there are certain people whose gifts is being able to advocate for people who are unable to advocate for themselves, people who justice comes very easily to them, who understand legal systems, like all of these things, but we just haven't seen them done in a positive enough way in enough times that we believe in that. But that's not a reason to be reactionary about out with the old, in with the new. It's, oh no, we need to keep what we've built already and take it with us so that we're building on a larger foundation. So what you're saying about the individual is, yes, it's just now almost exploring the other thing that we can add on to something else. It's not better and it's not worse. It comes with its own positives and its own negatives. And in human design, there are 3 layers of energy. So you have tribal, you have personal, tribal, and collective. And so whatever cycles we go through, we just go through them over and over again because that's how the slow evolution of humanity gets to its apex.
So how does this relate to, and this is a question, honestly, from one of our team members, of timeline jumping? So as we're getting towards 2027 and this new paradigm and this new energy that's going to impact us in small ways and big ways, how is the time speeding up? I know you've talked about the gaps between time and space closing and moving faster. I've definitely felt that. And I've also felt when I make a decision for my highest good, like stepping through fear, making the decision out of my full integrity, even though it could be like so easy to, you know, just say yes here, people please here, but like really making that conscious effort, things move really quick. I'm rewarded very quickly. A manifestation comes through or something kismet from the universe comes through. But where I'm settling or I know I need to take an action, but I'm like dragging my feet, it feels like the pressure cooker is on. I used to be able to just settle and it's like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll address that at some point in the future. Now it's like if you're settling, you can't unhear the ringing of like, you have to make a change here. Like the pressure is on in those spaces.
Absolutely. And the reason why that's happening is because the universe loves us so much and it wants us to move forward so quick. And so throughout history, if we were less able to connect something we did with the cause that it created, you would think that your actions don't really cost you that much. You'd be like, oh, well, I can just get away with this over here and no one's going to notice. The universe is always watching. But the important part to remember that is because we're at this pressure for the end of the cycle and there's more conscious people on this planet than there ever has been because of the very fact that people have laid the groundwork of, you know, that Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like our grandparents and our parents have done the work of getting food on the table, moving across the world, being refugees, like all of those things that we now can afford to do all this amazing stuff. So the universe is like, okay, you guys as a generation now, we're going to make this very freaking obvious so that you can tie the pieces together of you did this is what comes. And then you get to know exactly what it is, that the way that you paint on the canvas of life, even with your intentions, that nothing is going to cost you nothing.
So huge. How do you see integrity playing into it? Because we always talk about like our authentic code, these pillars of like who we authentically are. And I think there's also this other layer. I have the integrity gate in my human design, the gift there. So I'm like, okay, I really feel this on a deep level. But for me also, like I have sacral authority, generator. So I know that feels right. That doesn't feel right. And I remember podcast clients were like, you know, should I just buy followers to just boost it for the time being? And I'm like, I have to say from like my gut feeling, if your goal is to build a community and you're starting off by putting bots in there, I think that energy is going to continue on going forward. And you're better off building slower, having less of a following than even energetically tapping into that at this stage in the game, because I feel like there's going to be that consequence on the other side, and not in a scary way, but in a like every decision has weight and we can't take the easy way out. How do you see integrity playing out with all of this?
It's the most important thing to hold yourself to the highest standard that you can reach for today, because if your intentions are the sort of seed, and the action is just the way that you demonstrate it. There are so many different combinations of what intention could be behind what action and vice versa. So it's not necessarily that if everyone makes this, then everyone will get that. And we're addicted to kind of having someone tell us that if we do this, we'll get that. And that's something we have to decondition from, right? Because we have to learn our own essence, basically. But purifying your intentions is such an important concept, and being in your integrity, because if you're buying bots because you have the intention of getting a quick fix, the universe is like, okay, well, you deep down as a soul need to learn to not need a quick fix. So how will I teach you that? By showing you a quote unquote negative ramification of when you try to do that. So it could be energetically correct for you to do something, but it would be energetically incorrect for me to do something, not only because it's not aligned in our human design, but also because of the reasons why we're doing it. So that's why, and I love what you said earlier of how you're seeing when you do something that's really, feels right to you, you see the results so much quicker and the manifestation comes through, because we've become accustomed so much to thinking it has to be so difficult. But I promise you right now, the universe is desperate to find anyone whose light turns on, who's like, I'm in integrity, you can use me. And it's just like swirling around us all the time, being like, who can I funnel through? And so it's not even about us. It's not even about being special. It's not about anything. It's a simple mechanism of life, is that the universe is going to use the integrous people. And so it's almost the most selfish thing to do, but also the most selfless thing to do, to reframe every action you take as, this is a challenge for me to do the thing that is a little bit hard and a little bit of a stretch, but let me see the actual deep peace and reward that comes from when I make myself be my, you talk about this a lot, be your inner parent. No, this is a time when you actually need to say the right thing and say no to the thing that is the shiny carrot or whatever. So it's really powerful. And the parallels between this work and To Be Magnetic continue.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I think too, when I did my authentic code for our winter challenge last year, it's my top 4 gifts in human design. I hadn't got your book yet. I didn't know. I didn't have that. And I also didn't even realize those 4 numbers were primary gifts. I always just looked at the long list. And after I crafted my authentic code, I went back, and people who know a little bit more about human design than I do were like, oh yeah, this part's really important. These are your primary ones. And I was like, okay, cool. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, these are all of the pillars of my authentic code. I think it's absolutely wild.
And I think that's one of the things that gives you a lot of clarity, is to understand that there is no one modality or system that is better. There's nothing that works more than other things. It's all about if the person is out of their own way enough to deliver something. Again, going back to integrity, the biggest hack of all of this is just an attitude of service. What can you give to other people? And really truly doing it from a place of really connecting to what you're offering, because then you're out of your ego. You're not abusing your work to validate your own ego. You're not abusing your followers, your customers, to make you feel some sort of way, right? So you're not acting out of needing them to fill a void in you. You really get out of your own way and you really seek to deliver. And that's when the universe really genuinely can make you say things and do things that you couldn't have come up with in our small limited brain.
It's so funny because I think also we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our community and people who are building businesses, and we get a question of I know I want to do my own thing, but I don't know what that is. And maybe it's different for different design types, but for me as a generator, it's like a magnet. I'm compelled. I just can't stop thinking about it, talking about it. Even before working at TBM, I was telling everyone under the sun about it. I was trying to explain to them. I was like, yeah, but okay, think about it from this way and this lens and blah, blah, blah. I just couldn't stop because I just had so much passion and love for it. And I think it's really hard for people who might have a little bit of that, or maybe they have a shadow in the way where they feel like they can't fully step and speak into that with authority, or they have a myriad of different passions. What would you say for that person who's kind of okay, there's this new paradigm, I'm getting an integrity, but what is my path of service? If it's all about what I'm doing, how do I get in alignment with what I'm supposed to do on this planet to help serve?
I think service we have such a narrow version of what that is. It's you either have to be Mother Teresa or a guide or a healer to be of service. but think about the people that make your beautiful furniture and like how much that elevates like the space that you wake up in every day. So the consciousness of that person is either I want to elevate these people's physical experience because that reminds us or brings out a part of our essence, or it's like, I want to quickly make money, so let me just sell the quick thing and overprice it so that people just buy it, and let's make it a quick trend, and then it's a smash and grab. That's a completely different consciousness. So you can make any job spiritual. And according to human design, there's almost like a conveyor belt of different roles that get churned out over the course of the year in terms of the incarnation crosses, which is the 4 gifts we're talking about, which is what tells you about your purpose in this life. And so it's all about understanding that you can serve anybody with the thing that you do, the thing you really love to do. How can you change your consciousness to approach it with the intention of serving people, with the intention of adding something good into this world? So like the net positive of this world goes up and you've done your contribution to it. Sometimes we think, we have to have the best calling in the world or we're nothing, right? And we go in between the two. But it's actually, think about, you just have your role and everyone has their role. And your role is completely not better or worse than others. You just have a normal role, but you can just do your role really well.
There are certain brands where I'm so loyal to them because you can feel that energy coming off of what they're putting into the pieces. They're so craftsman, like every step of the process, they want to educate you on the materials and where they came from and how they're crafting the wood and how you can use it for your family for years on end. You can feel that from where you're purchasing, and it genuinely lights me up. And I don't know anything about furniture. That's the impact it's having on me and my space. And then if I'm in a good state, that impacts the work that I do. Like it's that trickle effect where everyone is going to impact everyone. I love the concept you had about the removing the scaffolding, because I think there's a little bit of needing that in order to see what our purpose potential could even be. Talk about this last workshop you put into your app too.
So this idea of scaffolding is that, okay, we talk about neural pathways and stuff, but it's also that the way that we as human beings think that we can be is so limited. So if I spent a day in your body, my mind would be blown. I would be like, oh my God, there's a different way to think about my options. There's a different way to think about how I service a car. There's a different approach that I have to finding music on Spotify. Like, how do I approach getting a playlist? Like, even small things like that. And the longer we do the ones that we do, the less we see of the other approaches to life that there are. So think about someone who's very logical, who's used to black and white thinking. They've never even stepped a foot in a person who's so creative and sees all the different angles, but then maybe they can't be so logical. And our medicine would actually be to just lean a little bit out of the crusty ways of approaching life that we've gotten so used to, but we can't even see them, right? So sometimes someone is like, it either has to be 100 or it has to be 0. And they've never ever thought about there could also be 50. And their brain, all we need to do is open up their brain to like, imagine if there's also a 50. And that's going to blow someone's brain off. But that's also how you expand your capacity to receive more of what the universe has. Because if you have blinkers on, the universe is not necessarily going to smash those blinkers. It's going to honor your blinkers, right? It wants to go at a pace that usually, unless we are massively rocked by the universe, usually it's going to honor where you're at in your life. And so the more you can expand yourself, the more it can come in for you. Back to the parallels here. But with purpose and stuff, one of the big things about this new paradigm is that we have to remember that what we have seen as vocations is not relevant to what kind of vocations are where we're going to. So the most amazing thing right now is that we only see really 5 to 10 versions of what a good career can be. And then we make ourselves go into those career paths because we tell ourselves that those are the only ways that we can have money or belonging or love or a feeling of success or any of the things that we go for. But what we need to understand is that every human being has that worked into their fabric. We all have the guarantee that we have and are worthy of all of those things. So instead of trying to create how we get to those things, we have to kind of rewire and say, listen, if I do this paperclip business because I cannot stop talking about paperclips, all it takes is for the person who's really passionate about it. That was the person that the universe assigned to do this role. And therefore, if I step up to my role, it's a guarantee that the universe is going to give me the rewards. And why? Because that's its way of telling you, honey, you're on the right path, keep going. When it dries up your resources and dries up alignment and stops things from flowing well, it's also because it cares about you so much, because it wants to say, take another turn. So there's more people who are trying to be something, not because they love the thing, but because they think they need to do that thing to get them the other thing that they're wanting. But the other thing you're wanting will come to you anyway if you just honor that random small niche that no one is glorifying right now, and you'll be the person that ends up doing something incredible with it. And you know, our brains are so funny because we feel discouraged if we're the only person doing it. And then we also feel discouraged if everyone is doing it. So
we want to be nuanced and a little unique, but not so unique that we're by ourselves.
yes.
With people playing small, could they see that as a place where they're not almost in integrity? Could they start to see those moments where they're hiding, where they're not stepping through that fear, just so they can start to program themselves like, oh, that was the option for me to step into my dharma, into the evolutionary path?
Absolutely. The staying small and the hiding, it's still ego. It's just the inverse ego of having a self-inflated thinking you're amazing, whatever. It's still keeping you away from living your path and living like the expression of the divine that you are. So anything that, whether you call it ego, you call it the inner opponent, whatever you want to call it, that thing is anything that's going to keep you away from just doing that. And so it can catch you on the other side too, where you maybe think that's more virtuous or whatever. There's so many layers in human design. If you know, for example, like if you're a manifestor, you could easily be hiding because that's something that manifestors do a lot. Or you could be staying small, especially if you're a manifesting generator and you have such a big energy and you're so dynamic and diverse. And so many of them are like, I feel like the complete opposite of that. So there's a lot of nuances, but for sure what you're saying is bang on, where it's the exact opposite of what you need to become.
And then speak a little bit about the red nails concept. The second you said that, I was like, I need to get long fingernails. I need to go get like tips on because I'm so not that person. I'm like, keep it short, minimal, no polish, very short polish. And then I was like, if I have long fingernails, I'll feel like I'm trying on a different identity. And maybe that's the thing that I need to shake the snow globe. So what's your theory on this?
So basically, you know how I was saying to you about, okay, I don't know all the different ways that you could go and get a coffee, or the different ways that if I was in your head for a day, what would life as a human be like? Without even my job, my partner, my whatever, just like living in your skin and your thoughts. And so what most of us, when I was saying we become so crusty in our things, we think that it's the only way. And then we have an identity that gets built around that. Therefore, one of the best ways to decrustify, for want of a better word, your inside thoughts and your narratives that you built around yourself and your reality is to literally just create some pattern interrupts. And they don't have to be ones that you're making a change about forever. But even, for example, painting your nails red will give you this pattern interrupt where every time you look at your nails, and it's not, the normal Jessica gets French manicure gel and you've painted your nails red, it's just going to shake you a little bit to be like, oh, there's different ways of being human in micro ways. And so let me just try on all the different avenues and flavors of human that there are in this world. And the billions and billions of different options that layer upon every single thing I do in the day. Can you imagine the probability tree of that? It's just infinite. It's mind-blowing. And so I just encourage people, if there's something that I've always done this, just what is the thing you've always done? And then just do it in a slightly different way. Even if it janks you, you can always go back, but it's more about creating the pattern interrupt. So for example, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm like, I always wear sweatpants. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to practice being a person who like dresses up well for the plane. If I hate it, I can go back, but let's just see what it's like to be that kind of human being. And just that creates that flexibility and that openness that the universe really loves to work with us on.
I think that's so helpful too if you're in a state where you're not getting a lot of pings or intuition, you're sitting in a bit of fear, you're not taking a lot of aligned action. What is one small thing that you can do to almost shift your identity of who you are? Because it's like, wow, if I'm that person that gets that red nail, maybe I'm also the person who can ask for that raise at work, or maybe I can set that boundary with that person. Like it shifts what is possible for you. It's almost like a much gentler, more positive rock bottom, where the rock bottom is we're going to pull away the thing from you and then you have to rebuild your identity. Let's try on a different outfit so your identity concept of who you are shifts. And it's so funny because even when I was thinking about that, and even in the smallest example of nails, I was like, oh, like I identify girls who have long nails as like more like the beauty influencers and people that really love fashion, and that's not me. And then the second I said that, I was like, oh, I've told myself that's not me, but what if I try it on for a day? It might not be me, but at least it will get me thinking outside that I'm in some box and I can't step into another box.
And it comes back to that it's not doing the thing, it's the meaning that we assign to what that thing is, you know? So it's like, what do you associate with those red nails, and can you try that on? And it also reminds us that we can't do it just by thinking. It's the trying it on, it's the painting on the canvas of life that we get that feedback of this is working, this feels more you. You might be surprised and actually end up doing something that was way more you than you ever even conceived of just because you did it differently that one day.